In 1839, a wealthy plantation owner in South Carolina attempted to hire the Charleston Bricklayers Society to build a new warehouse. He offered to pay double their standard rate if they would begin work immediately. The guild refused. Their refusal was not born of political dislike or a busy schedule. They refused because the owner would not agree to their unit pricing system. He wanted to negotiate each stage of construction separately, but the guild insisted on their published rate book, a system of fixed rates determined by master craftsmen who measured work in teams to prevent price manipulation. Rebuffed, the owner built his warehouse using non-guild labor. It collapsed in a storm 7 years later. Meanwhile, the guild's buildings from that same era still stand today. This history began for me with a single coin, a silver trade token from the 1840s, stamped with the mark of a Philadelphia ironworks. It is solid and heavy, roughly the size of a quarter. One side depicts a hammer and anvil, the other lists its value not in dollars, but in hours of skilled labor. One token equaled 4 hours of blacksmith work or 8 hours of apprentice time. In trying to trace the origin of this token, I didn't just find a transaction history, I found an entire economic structure that operated before 1863. It was a system that did not require federal currency, centralized banks, or institutional debt. Before the mid-19th century, American craftsmen operated under a guild system alongside local currency networks and community credit arrangements. The Carpenters Company of Philadelphia, founded in 1724, is the oldest craft guild in North America. Its members were master builders, combining the roles of modern architects, structural engineers, and contractors. When the colonies needed Independence Hall or a meeting place for the First Continental Congress, these guilds built them. These structures were not built with the expectation of constant renovation, they were built to last centuries. Independence Hall's timber frame, joined in the 1730s, still bears the building's weight today. The guild's guarded rule book contained a pricing system based on unit rates. Every stage of construction had a standardized fair price. This wasn't determined by whatever the market would bear or by taking advantage of a client's desperation. Prices were set by measurers who worked in teams to ensure no individual could inflate costs for personal gain. This fairness extended beyond the guilds to the entire pre-1863 economy. Community members held extended lines of credit for months or years. A farmer might pay a carpenter in wheat. A miller might settle a debt with flour. This barter and face-to-face arrangement bound communities together, making currency secondary to reputation and mutual obligation. My grandfather's trade token was a piece of this world. The ironworks issued it as payment, and workers could spend it at any local business that trusted the ironworks' reputation. It was money backed not by a distant federal government, but a known master craftsman and a local workshop. Modern history often labels this system as primitive or chaotic. Indeed, by the 1860s, there were over 7,000 different state banknotes in circulation, and counterfeiting was rampant. The Library of Congress records upwards of 10,000 unique legal banknotes before the Civil War. However, while the official narrative focuses on the chaos, it overlooks the results. The buildings produced under this system still stand, and the furniture remains intact. The turning point came on February 25, 1863, when President Abraham Lincoln signed the National Currency Act. This created the office of the Comptroller of the Currency and established the first national banking system. While we are taught this was about modernization and stability, the legislation's primary purpose was to finance the Civil War by increasing demand for federal debt. National banks were required to purchase U.S. Treasury securities. To issue more currency, they had to buy more government bonds. To ensure the success of this new system, the government placed a 10% tax on state banknotes by 1865, effectively destroying local and state-issued currencies within 3 years. The diverse ecosystem of local money, guild tokens, municipal notes, and state bills was wiped out. A pattern emerges when looking at the timing of other legislation. The Homestead Act of 1862 offered 160 acres of land to citizens for a small fee. It was framed as a great democratic promise. However, the actual cost of developing that land, tools, livestock, and materials ranged from $1,000 to $2,500. Most laborers could not afford this. Consequently, only 40% of homestead claims were ever completed. The rest were sold to speculators, railroads, and large interests. The Homestead Act gave Americans land they couldn't afford to develop, and the National Currency Act, passed 9 months later, created the banking system that would lend them the money to try. As the guild system and local credit networks were dismantled, the company town rose in their place. By the 1880s, roughly 2,000 company towns existed across America. In these towns, workers were paid not in federal currency, but in scrip, a private substitute currency spendable only at company-owned stores and for company-owned housing. Without competition, prices for food and rent became exorbitant. Workers quickly accumulated debts they were required to pay before they could leave. In the coal regions of Kentucky and West Virginia, 75% of all scrip was issued by coal companies. Debt accumulated faster than wages, creating a cycle of debt slavery where workers owed more than they earned. The Pullman strike of 1894, involving 250,000 workers, led to a national commission that labeled the company town un-American. But by then, the damage was done. The old model, guild networks regulating fair prices, barter systems based on mutual obligation, and credit between neighbors, was gone. It was replaced by scrip, company-controlled wages, and inescapable debt. We might wonder if these connections are merely coincidental or if they represent a deliberate dismantling of community-based economies. Yet we can still see the old ways in practice today within the Amish community. They maintain a contribution-based economy for major expenses. When an Amish family faces a medical bill they cannot afford, the community raises the funds during church gatherings. It functions like insurance, but without the profit-driven extraction of premiums, deductibles, or claim denials. Interestingly, the Amish had to fight the federal government for years to maintain this system, eventually winning an exemption from Social Security in 1965. Their success serves as a reminder that systems can function effectively without central banks, provided they are built on a foundation of mutual obligation and local trust, the very system America chose to replace.